It's not about what you have. It's about who you have. It's not about where you live. It's about how you live. And it's not about what you do. It's about why you do it. Welcome to the Momentasize Podcast. Today, I've got a very special guest for us. We're going to fly with this one. He has found a way to take, my favorite people to talk to are people who find a way to take their passion and turn it into business. And Toby Woods has figured out how to do that. Without further ado, please help me welcome Toby Woods to the podcast.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me, Dirk.
Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. For people who don't know Toby Woods, give us just a quick background, your backstory, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I was born and raised in a little town on the coast of Maine called Momentasize out in the middle of nowhere, and little lobster fishing village. Just grew up only child, throwing rocks into the ocean and playing sports and doing things, running around out in the woods out there. And came out west to go to college. Go to college at Oregon State initially. Played baseball. Bounced around in college a little bit. Went to school a few different places, and then ended up in Bend, playing some semi-pro baseball here for the Bend Elks. And then went through my, raft guide, ski bum phase, classic Bend stuff, playing outdoors, getting dirty, doing all that stuff. And then got into aviation. And and my aviation career has kind of taken me to being a commercial pilot, flight instructor, flying corporate aviation, and flying now wildland fire, and then also running my own aviation charter business. And so, that's how I got to where I am, I guess.
Boom.
Yeah.
I can't wait to unpack a lot of those pieces with you. Just to give everybody a reference point, how old are you now?
30.
30. How old were you when you started your business?
I was 27.
27.
Yeah.
27. And what the business specifically, what's the business? What's Direct to specifically do?
Yeah, so Direct to is a Part 135 certificated air carrier. So we have an air carrier certificate that's not all that dissimilar to Delta or United or Alaska, one of the big airlines, but it's a little bit different in that we have authority to run kind of on-demand aviation. So we're not a scheduled airline, but we can run on-demand flights. So that could look like cargo or passenger carrying. We've focused on passenger carrying mostly. It can look like manned aviation. It can look like drones and unmanned aviation going forward. But that kind of serves as the basis for what we do, having that air carrier certificate. And then, what we do on top of that is mostly focus on on-demand regional travel for people. So moving people around here in the Pacific Northwest and hopefully up and down the West Coast, and kind of having that brand that's focused on kind of rugged individualism and getting people to places that, commercial airlines don't serve, that, vehicles aren't a good option, dealing with mountains and rivers and all that stuff, getting people around and facilitating both business for them, pleasure travel as well. Super fun.
Yeah, I mean, you guys do a phenomenal job. My family's a customer of yours. You fly us into Siletz and other places. And I know, my dad really, really likes you as well. Has been learning how to fly with you. And we're in your group of, there's another pilot. So they've been learning how to fly, and that passion, has really, it's been fun to watch all of that unfold. And you do get us that Siletz runway. It's a pretty tight little runway there.
Yeah, I mean, there's 5,000 public use airports in the U.S., right? And 70 to 80% of all commercial travel goes into just 30 of those 5,000 public use airports. So what we do is open up that map, and allow people to get to places like Siletz, like you're talking about. And the journey is part of the destination, I think, like you're talking about. When you get into those small airports, super fun.
What's the craziest airport you've ever had to land in, or what's the craziest approach you've ever had to take?
Oh man, I mean, there's some incredible ones out there. Some of my favorites that come to mind: Stanley, Idaho. It's a super small mountain airport, about 7,000 feet in the Sawtooth. Half the runway is dirt, half the runway is pavement. And, where the pavement and the dirt meet, there's this crazy little lip. And, you're always trying to navigate that and flying in there. And it's beautiful in the summertime. Sitka, Alaska is crazy because it's just surrounded by water. It's like they built this little island to put the runway on, and you're flying over the bays up in Alaska and just nothing but water on all sides of the runway. So I don't know, man. That's my favorite part, is going to new runways. It's mind blowing.
Big adrenaline rush, or what? Like when you're landing every single time, does it normalize, or what's the deal there?
I mean, for me, I love the sport part of flying, like that's why I got into it, was really like the skill acquisition of the hand-eye coordination of, using your feet, using your hands, obviously taking in visual cues, a super dynamic environment. I mean, you're an athlete, like, you know what that's like. It's super fun. So for me, I mean, yeah, there's some landings that get more vanilla when weather's simple and you get more experience and time goes on. But I mean, there's plenty that are still challenging and fun, and yeah, it's super exciting. I love the adrenaline piece of it. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be like I know in sports, the big thing that I love is if you're playing at a high level, you cannot be anywhere else but in the moment. You're just in the moment. You're in the sport, right? And when you get into that state, there's something really, really addicting about that. It's my favorite part about sports. I can only imagine when you're flying, flying's got to be a little bit different too, because you do the takeoff, right? Yeah. And then you kind of go on autopilot for a little bit, right? You got to check, make sure everything's going good. But the landing, that's got to be the highest, the biggest high, or what?
Yeah, the landing's the crux of the crux of the whole deal, for sure. I mean, takeoff and landing are both pretty exciting, but landing an airplane, that's really what pilots get paid to do. There's no doubt about that. So, with wind, with short runways, with all these factors that can potentially come into play, landings are super exciting. And I love them. So, you never get tired of landing an airplane, man.
Yeah, and we
gotta get you up there.
I know you're obviously good I like riding passenger rather than fly, but you're obviously good at it because you're still here. What about, you had the passion, you got into flying. Talk to us about when you decided, hey, there's a business opportunity here. What was that like, and where did the idea come from? And then from the idea of making an actual business, talk to us about that.
Yeah. So I think for me, I didn't come from a business background in terms of family, or really even just like people in my life or my network that were, business people or anything like that. So again, for me in the business and that starting, it was the idea of a challenge, the idea of, hey, could I create something? Could I put the pieces together and build a team? Again, drawing on kind of what I knew from team sports and stuff like that, to create something that I didn't see existing in the market, and therefore the business case for it and what, you think traditionally people would kind of look into and assess before starting. I think that place was missing, and I was just running headlong blind into it and super excited about providing that product. So for me, it came from, I was a flight instructor here in Bend, right? Full time. And I started teaching people how to fly who were using aviation in a way that the way that you use it, the way that people we see use it traveling around for business, for pleasure, but not super long distances. We're not talking about private jets coast to coast here. We're talking about shorter hop regional travel, and they were loving it. They were loving that experience, and I was getting to see it through their eyes as I was teaching them, right? So then I was like, man, there's people that aren't going to learn to do this on their own, that still love to access this type of product, that would love to access this type of kind of magic carpet, shrink the map type of thing. So I said, hey, can we put it out there into the world? What would we have to do that? And so I was starting from scratch in terms of understanding what it looked like to run an air carrier, to own an air carrier certificate, FAA compliance, all this stuff, right? And so it was just a challenge. And, people thought I was crazy. So I actually put a Craigslist ad out looking to buy one of these air carrier certificates, and found one up in Alaska. It was the only place I could find one. Took a one-way flight to Anchorage, knocked on this guy's door who responded to my Craigslist ad, and yeah, I mean, that was how I got going.
So you're like, okay, I got to get a certificate. Am I understanding that?
Yeah.
And you went and you purchased it, and boom, that's how you.
Yeah, exactly. And you can create these things from scratch. It usually takes like 3 or 4 years, and people pay like consultants like hundreds of thousands of dollars and all this craziness. And again, for me, it was just like, I want to see if we can do this, and I want to see if we can do it now. That was kind of my timeline. We don't have deep pockets, like endless money to spend. So again, it was seeing if I could make something happen kind of quick by just scrounging and grinding and getting into it. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, and you made it happen. From the time of buying that certificate to now, what's the business look like now? How many pilots do you have, and what's the operational piece look like?
Yeah, so right now we have 5 aircraft under management, about 10 pilots, give or take, and we have airplanes both in Bend, Oregon, and in a couple in Portland, Oregon now. And we were just looking to expand kind of out from Bend, Portland area, not get too geographically dispersed because of some of the challenges that come up with that. But yeah, we fly probably about 1,500 flight hours a year. And we fly, 12 months out of the year. Summer's definitely our busy season. We do see a lot of seasonality in travel we do, but I think we've flown into over 270 airports now, last time I checked. So we're really connecting a ton of different places for people, which is super fun.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah. So touching back on, when the idea came to you, you're like, hey, this is a huge challenge, super exciting. Unlike me, where I had a huge infrastructure in front of me, which gave me a massive advantage. You did not have that from you. Like you said, you didn't have a business.
Yeah.
So anybody in your family or direct mentors that were helping you in the business. So you're like, super exciting. Let's make it happen. I want it now. You took all those steps. Talk to us about like once the challenge went from this is exciting, I'm going to make an opportunity, to the reality of them becoming an everyday entrepreneur. What was that like?
Yeah. I mean, I think, to be honest, Dirk, like I wouldn't tell anyone to do it the way I did it. Like I think there's a lot of smarter ways to do it. And I think that's been a fun realization for me in the learning process as well, is like there was not a lot of beta testing. There was not a lot of, hey, dip the toe in and get some feedback and learn. There was one huge leap off the deep end. And then it was pretty much, hey, we're all in, we're committed because spent the capital we do have. We've picked this path, right? Even just choosing a specific aircraft type and saying, hey, this is the direction we're going to go to start, and, believe in the business case here, which hadn't been fully evaluated, right? And then you're just going. And so for me, I think there certainly was a honeymoon period where it was super exciting. I think I've always enjoyed building the brand, and probably my strength as an entrepreneur is more on the thinking about sales and marketing and product development side. And then so in the beginning, that's all there was. And then all of a sudden we had to operate charters, right? And all of a sudden, I was the first pilot for the company, as well as having to try to delegate and hire some of the more administrative roles and things like that as I got in the cockpit more. And then some of those things that I was good at around brand building and stuff kind of fell to the wayside, as I just had to, we got to go fly flights. We got to start turning some revenue. We got to bring money back in. And managing people, I think is a tough one, right? That's not something that I love or comes naturally to me. And you learn that as you build a team and talk about being an everyday entrepreneur, and just the pieces that come with being an operator and not just a 0 to 1 guy, not just a dreamer, right? Have been challenging, and you learn to, I think, maybe ride the highs and lows a little bit less as time goes on. But I know initially as an operator for me, it was just so concerned about letting customers down, just really focused on customer service, worried about how to interact with my employees. As for the first time I was a boss, right? Things like that were all challenging. I think, frankly, they remain challenges for me.
Yeah. You know what I think is wild is, because I think you do a phenomenal job having been a customer. I'm a customer of yours, and I know, for example, we were just talking about this a little bit, when you're hyper competitive, specifically with yourself, like you're a college athlete, right? Sure. And specifically, like you and I are similar in a way, I'm super competitive with myself. And for me, it's always, I just want things to be better and better and better and better all the time. Mm-hmm. And I am a perfectionist. And so something that happens with perfectionists are, you want to drive all this improvement, and because you want to drive all this improvement and you're hyper competitive with yourself, you just always looking for it to improve, but you forget to look back and be like, oh, holy cow, when I first started this thing, I was wearing every single hat, right? You forget to have grace with yourself, or you have to forget, like, holy cow, like, it's pretty cool that today we've got 10 pilots, we're chartering 5 different planes, right? And you just, because you're so competitive and you want the next thing, you forget to do that. And so I think that happens with a lot of entrepreneurs and competitors, right?
Yeah, it's hard to zoom out, right?
Yeah.
But what about for you? Have you enjoyed, do you like managing people? Like, I'm always curious about that, like that 0 to 1 person versus an operator. Like, I feel like you're a little bit more naturally an operator. Like, do you enjoy that piece?
Yeah, I got an interesting combo, and I think it just comes from the way I was raised. Like, my father, he's a super big dreamer, big visionary guy, and then my mother's like a real operator. How are we going to make this thing happen? And being a middle child, I think I just kind of got a little bit of both of those pieces. I like to dream, and then from an operational side, I mean, we'd have to ask the people that we work with whether or not it goes well. But I think my main approach towards building the company in general was, hey, I'm going to go culture first and then recruit people who would fit in that culture.
Yeah.
And then we do very little like micromanaging or anything like that. We do a lot of collaboration, bring people in who are better at whatever, like for project management, somebody who's better at managing projects than I am. Superintendent, somebody who has 25 plus years master carpenter skills in construction, right? That I could never do. On the marketing side, we bring Riley in, who's a master marketer, right? And so my job, what I saw for myself was, okay, what I need to do is to provide the collaboration, the support, the mindset. Hey, let's look at it this way, this angle, that angle. And then the culture to be able to have all these great people come together. But that wasn't easy because initially I didn't even do that right. When I made my first couple hires, I didn't have a culture set and I was just throwing bodies at a problem, right? I was like, dang, kind of what you were saying, like, I've got all these projects. I have to be the superintendent, the project manager, the admin. Okay, the first position that makes sense to replace is the admin, right?
Right.
So then I would just like, first person that was willing to help me, I'm going to hire.
Right.
That was my first go at it, right? Sure. And then I put that person in a bad position and myself in a bad position because I wasn't clear on what we needed from a cultural side. So I went through a couple cycles of that. And then finally through reading books, which I was never a book reader. I hated books. And then all of a sudden I had something that rather than it be this theory-based book, now I could take these principles that these really smart people were putting in place and I could make it a practical application. Like traction. I talk about that book a lot. That finally helped me get it going. And then, I get a lot of passion out of because I think it was the team sport. So I get a lot of passion out of working together with people and trying to collaborate towards a future. And so I like that piece of it. I think that the hardest part is when you're, I'm 30 as well, being 30, sometimes the hard conversations, having those in a really good, strong way, and the key for me, and I think this comes from being a dad, and my wife showed me this, it's like you be firm but kind, because leaders need to be firm, but also kind. I don't want to just be a dick. Nobody wants to work for a dick. And so that those two words, both in how we parent and then how we run the business, are a good little tip for us there. So, I think but there's no, like, as we're doing it, I'd be curious to also see how the team feels about what the leadership is like or what's lacking, right? Because like you said, sometimes we only see what we see. And,
Were you like a vocal leader, like as an athlete growing up, cause like, I think when you're young as an athlete and you're successful, like you were, no doubt, like I know I'm kind of mistakenly thought I was a leader, right? It wasn't until I got to college and it was there was more parity in the talent level that I realized, I'm not like inherently a leader. It's just like, I was one of the best players all the time. So you kind of mistook yourself for being a leader almost, but did it come naturally to you to be a leader?
I had a similar challenge as you. Like the problem I had to do is I had to grow in my ego. So I was like, because of soccer and the competition, like my ego, I was very emotional and I had to learn like soccer taught me a lot about how to deal with like the ego side of me, because you need some ego to compete, but you can have a healthy piece. And so I had the similar thing where like by default, I was a leader, in let's say the club soccer side of things, because you're one of the better players. But then when it came to the actual college, very similar to you, I wasn't like a captain on the team or anything. But we would just lead, silent leader through actions. I would say that's
more an example based.
Exactly. I think that's how I would see that piece of it. Who are some of the best leaders you've ever had, or who are some mentors or leaders that have changed your life?
Oh man, that's a great question. I mean, I think obviously of coaches I had, like athlete, baseball coaches, I guess, specifically for me growing up, I think really getting to the high school level and like you talked about dealing with your ego, you're successful, you're a young guy, you want to be the best, you probably think you're the best. And kind of, my high school coach, Blaine Steves was his name, kind of putting me in line, like benching me for the first time when I kind of mouth back at him a little much, right? And kind of teaching me the way of just adding discipline to your life, adding, hey, you're not always the top dog and you're going to have to work within a system and you're going to have to not always be the boss and stuff like that. I think my pitching coach at Oregon State, Nate Yeske, was a guy that was an incredible leader. I think he's a head coach at University of Arizona now. And he used to say, never make the same mistake once. And I love that quote from him, because I think at first it made no sense to me. And then as time went on, it was like, oh man, he's saying that at least in a team environment, you're getting a ton of feedback through the mistakes that the people around you are making. And I mean, we see that in business too, right? We get all kinds of feedback from what our competitors, our friends, the successes they have, also the mistakes they make, right? And he was saying, hey, if you can take that feedback before you go out and recreate that mistake and, implement fixes, implement adjustments to your own game. That's one that's always stood out to me.
That's pretty badass. I've never heard that one before, actually.
Yeah.
Never make the same mistake once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's saying it's the same mistake.
Yeah.
Same mistake twice is making it twice.
Yeah,
Same
exactly.
mistake, but you already seen the mistake for somebody else.
Yeah, you've already seen. I like that, actually. It's a mindset shift for sure.
It's a good one.
Yeah, isn't that wild how...
Easier said than done.
Easier. Isn't everything like that? Isn't it wild how when you're in sports like that, the amount of life lessons that you're getting along the way, especially when you don't know it yet, because you don't have perspective, you haven't gone without sports yet, so you don't have perspective that you're gaining. To me, it's like when I reflect back on similar to you, I had great coaches and mentors, and then I've been able to take what they instilled in me every single day and through principles, similar sayings, right? Like we have similar to what you have. We have, for example, coach who taught us how to begin with the end in mind. So if you have a big dream, you begin with the end in mind. You never realize how big of an impact those sport teams are going to have to you for your rest of your life.
Sure, it's huge. I mean, I think it's influenced us in a lot of positive ways as entrepreneurs. I think I've been thinking more recently about how some of the skill acquisition piece and the linear relationship between hard work and effort and practice increasing your skill in a sport, right? Like, you put in the classic thing, 10,000 hours, right? You get a lot better. You become an expert at that sport. But just like, the amount of shots you take on goals, more or less literally equivalent to how much better you get as a soccer player. And I think that piece in entrepreneurship, I don't think there's a direct correlation between hard work and building wealth as an entrepreneur. And I think that those lessons we learned about hard work in sports can sometimes lead us down this super narrow, just keep pushing, add, right? Yeah. Instead of zooming out and kind of that more first sort of thinking where like, man, maybe this isn't the pathway. Maybe the real business is adjacent, or maybe it's some problem with the formula where it's just not adding gas to the fires and gonna make it burn hotter,
Yeah. So. What I'm hearing you say is like in business, it's not the harder you work, it doesn't guarantee the more money you're gonna make. You might be, because the model itself or whatever, like you said, the pond itself might just not be big enough, right? So you might have, it's already too fish. There's no more fish in the pond, right?
Yeah.
So you can keep casting, but it might not happen. Is that what you're saying there?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's just different. There's not a direct, linear relationship between the amount of hours in the day and the success, where it's not direct in sports either, but I think it's closer, especially when you're younger, especially when you're on the climb. Maybe you get to the highest level with athletics too, it becomes a little bit more of a mental game, and it becomes more of a kind of a self-awareness and a tweak thing. And it's not just put more hours in, but I think in entrepreneurship is more skewed towards that piece earlier on, where it's small adjustments. It's about being outsmarting the opponent versus just like running headlong through the brick wall. Yeah. I mean, you got to do some of that too. I'm not knocking the hard work.
Yeah, no, I think I actually couldn't agree more with you. There's a book called Blue Oceans, which talks a lot about that. Red ocean, a lot of sharks, everyone's already in there. Find your blue ocean, right? Where you got a ton of opportunities. So I couldn't agree more with you. And hard work, no matter what, creates more opportunity. I agree. Like, but you have to make sure that it's pointed in the right direction, And
hard work going the wrong direction. I mean, you can pound your head against the wall for a long, long time, with your business, I think. And I think, kind of being able to wait, to step back and take enough of a higher level view of what you're doing can save you a lot of that pain and angst sometimes.
How are some of the ways you're doing that, right? Because when you're in it. So how are some of the ways that you are reflecting, or moments that you are able to say, hey, am I going the right direction, or do I need to pivot here?
I think for me, a huge focus in the last year or so has been to give myself more unstructured time. And part of that's delegating, certainly, is realizing that I'm not so integral to each piece of the business that I'm irreplaceable, right? So there's a bit of an ego check there and saying, hey, a lot of other people can do this at least, if not 100% or 110% better, maybe 80 or 90% is good enough, right? When that allows me to have more unstructured time, it allows me to have more creative time. Because if you're saying, hey, my strengths as an entrepreneur are to go out there and think about product development and do more sales and be creative and drive that next horizon, so to speak, you can't be super deep in it every day. And so it's kind of that inverse thing where sometimes like it feels like working less hard, but it gives me the capacity, it gives me the mental energy, it gives me the space to kind of to dream. So it's to put myself out of my comfort zone, is to, travel a little bit more and be outside the business a little bit more and watch other people operating the business, and think about would I do that differently? Would I do that the same? Or how can we structurally improve things instead of just, hey, I need to go fly that next flight, or I need to think about, what kind of snacks we're going to serve on the airplane, what magazines we're going to put in the seat bags is kind of the bigger picture stuff for me. So it's hard, right? Because I think my nature in not growing up wealthy and growing up with, parents that were downright frugal, like borderline cheap and stuff, is it's just like, if I see, man, I got to pay someone else, even just let's call $1,000 to do a task I could have done, that just eats at me. That's super hard for me to let go of, not from a control perspective, but just from, again, it's like the way we were raised in our prior experiences leading to like who we are as human beings. And so trying to encourage myself to be okay with doing those sort of things to, again, free me up to do the thing that's not just has $1,000, payout to get back even, but the potential to be, a business changing, life changing type of addition or type of, add to what we currently do or new line of business, right?
Yeah, I love it. And I commend you for having that level of awareness, both about what was, a pattern that was in you, like you said, the frugal pattern that was handed down to you, and then being able to have the awareness on, okay, hey, this is a challenge I have. I feel this way for who knows what reason, identifying it and then figuring out ways to let that go. So I commend you for that. That's pretty amazing. You have that awareness. And I agree, like sometimes when I have the most stress and I feel like there's so much happening, the solution, it's counterintuitive, but is to go and actually remove yourself. It feels like you just need to work your way out of it, when usually that's the opposite. You need to take a step away so that you can get clarity and then have a step forward and travel. Well, I'd never realized, I'd never always been a homebody type, right? Where like I didn't need to go see the world. It never called me, but more and more now, because each time I go and travel, I get new ideas, or I connect new dots, or I see how somebody's doing that. And I'm like, oh, that's really smart. Like, that's really cool. And so I think travel leads, same for me. It makes me think differently, or makes me have these small mini aha moments because of the experiences. So I know it's I
think we're creatures of habit. We're, routine based, right? And kind of bursting our own little bubbles, is super, super good for us. And just from a happiness standpoint, just from a wellness standpoint, but the unintended consequences on the business can be equally as powerful for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as an entrepreneur, there's so much happening in the business. And one of my releases has been the exercise world. Now that we don't have sports, I know it's been the same for you. Touch base on a little bit of what you're doing in the ultra exercise, pull, pedal, paddle world. What's happening there? Yeah,
it's funny, man. I think you can relate to this, but it's like physical health, right? Moving around, but really it's like mental health for you as an entrepreneur. It calms my mind. It keeps me sane, right? It gives me that juxtaposition from all the kind of the decision-making process to get out there and push the body, but you get the endorphins, you get those good feeling mentally, you just kind of get to shut down, quiet the mind a little bit. So, I mean, This year I did the pole pedal paddle, kind of the Bend.
Yeah, what is the pole pedal paddle?
Yeah. So the pole pedal paddle is this stage race in Bend here in the springtime. So you start up at Mount Bachelor, right at the ski resort outside of town. You got like a 100-yard sprint up to your downhill skis. You click into your downhill skis. You ski like a downhill ski race course to the bottom. You get out of your downhill skis, you put on your cross country skis so you can do classic or skate skiing. Skate skiing's faster. So that's what anyone who wants to be competitive does. Yeah. So then you skate this course. I think it's like 5K or 6K. Anyways, it takes about 20 minutes or so. You get back to the parking lot there. You take off your Nordic ski gear, you get on your bicycle, you bicycle down from Mount Bachelor to Bend. It's about 22 miles, I think. You get off your bike, put your running shoes on, you do like a 5-mile run along the river trail. In Bend, you come out at the river there, you get into a kayak, you do a kayak up down river, then you get out of your kayak and you do like 800-meter sprint to the finish. So yeah, I did that for the first time solo this year, and it was super fun. I think I was the 12th individual over the line. So I got some to aim for next year.
That's big.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun, right? It's things that I love to do, and I'm not elite at one or the other of them, but altogether it's kind of a fun challenge to get to, be a good enough Nordic skier and a good enough cyclist and stuff and a good enough paddler to be able to try to be competitive. So I'll shoot for a top 10 next year.
And a big time psychopath.
Yeah, dude. But nothing like running 100 miles like you, dude.
Yeah, no, I mean, that one's pretty wild. If you think about just to start the race at a full sprint, 100-yard uphill is pretty,
in your ski boots. Yeah,
oh, yeah.
Dude,
in your ski boots.
Yeah,
you forgot to mention in your ski boots, dude.
Yeah. No, it's a sweet event. Have you ever thought about doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't touched base on it yet. I think the problem is this, like I could do the running.
Oh yeah.
The skate skiing.
Yeah.
The few times I've tried cross country skiing, my dad, he always says the one thing he likes to do with me is cross country ski because I eat shit every single time. And it's the one thing as a 6-year-old man, I hope you're listening, you 6-year-old man. It's the one thing that he can beat me at. So he loves doing that with me. Yeah. So I have to do some real practice there. Yeah. But you got me kind of inspired because when I was hearing it, like I could see even in your eyes, the challenge that it was, like that is, you think about how much exertion you do there and each skill that you have to push out. I mean, going from Bachelor, just that bike going from Bachelor down to Bend. So where'd you go? Bend Farewell Park or something, and then run 5 miles around the river?
Yeah, you come out at the athletic club of Bend is where you put your running shoes on, you kind of weave down through the retirement community there and you hit the river trail.
Yeah, that's not an easy 5-mile run either. No. That has has grade to it. So
yeah, for sure. So a lot of it's on dirt. Yeah, I mean, it's a fun event, dude. I mean,
it's a bunch of adrenaline junkies that live here. That's how you come up with something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, super fun. What, do you have any big objectives coming up?
We're running another marathon.
Hell yeah.
And you were there for the marathon. Actually, Toby for the Eugene Marathon opened up his house. He was a trooper. He came and we couldn't do it. What's crazy about those races is you do the race, but nobody sees the behind the scenes and the sacrifices that good friends and family do just to help you. Like Toby opened up his house for us. We slept there. He was helping us. It's not easy to go and be a bottle drop. You're having to do a lot of work, and there's the silent supporters there are huge. So yeah, you were a major part in us being able to hit our goal there. So Connor, of course, because he's a psychopath, just like you, me, all of us. But he wanted to he's like, okay, let's try to run a 240 now. So we ran a 258 high on that one. And he's like, I think we just didn't go hard enough. So 240 in December is what we're trying to do in Sacramento.
Crazy.
So we'll see how it goes.
Dude. I can't wait to see that.
It's one of those ones that scares, a goal that really, really scares you.
Yeah.
That's one that really scares me. Because running 6-minute pace for 26 miles, that's
fast, dude.
It scares me.
That's fast.
That really scares me.
So that's exciting. You actually inspired me. I signed up for a road marathon, my first one ever. This fall.
When is it?
It's October 13th in
Portland?
Newport, Rhode Island.
Oh, Newport. Yeah. Oh, you go to no way.
I gotta get way out of here, get far away so no one knows who I am.
That's where you're gonna go, huh? Oh, no support
I got a brother over there.
Okay, good.
A half brother that wants to run it. So I don't know if we're gonna run it together because I think he wants to go fast. But yeah.
Well, I owe you. So next, when you do that and get addicted, I owe you a support crew on it. Yeah. So we'll make it happen.
We'll figure it out for sure.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the real estate piece, because you've done, from what I understand, you built your own. You bought your piece. We'll talk about that. But you also built a tiny home.
Yeah.
In that journey, right? Let's just touch a little bit on real estate, what that's done for you, and what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, the tiny home, right, was a really cool project. Again, just like for me, it was skill acquisition. It was like, I've never run a table saw. I've never run a chop saw in my life. Like, it was like, well, what if I go to Home Depot and buy a table saw and buy some 2x4s and try to build a house, you know? And luckily, I had some friends who were willing to give me a hand and make sure I didn't get my fingers chopped off in the first couple of days, right? But I mean, literally, that's how it started. Yeah. I drew up some plans. Of course, I thought I could design the house, right? Like, my mom said, maybe you should design a birdhouse first. Like, you sure you're qualified to do this? I was like, no, it'll be fine, right? So literally, that's how it started. I found some poor soul online to put the plans together, and he was like a draftsman, right? So he drew them up well enough that you know, we could build off them essentially. But yeah, it was crazy, right? And then bought this trailer, had the trailer kind of custom made as the foundation for the house, and drove up to Washington State, get this trailer, hook it up to the back of my dad's Sprinter van, and it comes unhitched on I-5 on the way back down to Oregon. It's like,
what, the pin wasn't in, or what happened?
Yeah, dude, who knows, man? I've probably never put a trailer on in my life. Thing literally punctures the plastic back bumper, so it's get wedged in there. Otherwise, it would have gone flying off into the left lane on I-5. So we get this thing back to Oregon with just a busted bumper on my dad's van. And I was living in a rental house at the time on the west side of Bend. And of course, I'm like, well, where am I going to build this thing? Right? I got to have some place to build it. I don't own land or anything at this time. So I decided to cut a hole in the back fence of the rental, which opened up onto a street, but it was a solid fence. And so cut a hole, right? So I cut the fence in half. I put 2 hinges, so I make these just swinging doors, large enough to drive the trailer into the backyard of the rental, close the fence back up so it looks like nothing's going on there, and proceed to build this thing for like 3 or 4 months until it started to go up, right? So we were working on the bottom half, and then it starts to go vertical, and my roommates are like, man, you gotta cut this out.
People are
like,
gonna be questioning.
Yeah, exactly. So moved down to Lapine, and I knew someone down in Lapine that had a piece of land and allowed me to finish it up down there. So we were able to get it taken care of. But that was how it started. And it learned as I went, made some stupid mistakes. I remember putting like MDF like on the outside, like as exterior trim. Then had to rip it off.
You're like, this will look good.
Just tried to paint it.
Window trim,
tried to paint it. Yeah. Just like,
that's so good,
I mean,
dude.
stuff that
That's
as a builder, like you're
that's
like,
so
like, dude, it's embarrassing. But
that's so good.
I mean, that's where I was. It was just full send, and
that's so awesome, man.
It took me just over a year, I took a few months off that first winter because I was whacking my my finger with a hammer, and it's like 30 degrees.
Yeah,
and
I got
this sucks.
Yeah.
But and then I lived in it for about 5 years full time.
Wow.
And man, I loved it. It's 192 square feet, 26 feet long, 8.5 wide, so it's road legal. You can move it around. I moved it around probably 3 or 4 times, and eventually bought the property that you were referring to earlier, and then was able to turn the main house that was on the property when I bought it into an income producing property for myself right away, and park the tiny house kind of in the back corner and live in it and oversee the tenants and make sure no one got too wild, and just went about my life. So
yeah. I mean, that's a pretty badass story. You went from like the idea to, most people would have an idea, and I talk about this. They have the idea, and they'd be like, that'd be really cool to do, and then they'd probably forget about it. But you went from like idea straight to, hey, we're gonna get this thing going, right? And you just push massive action behind it. Who cares about MDF trim on the outside? Just so everybody knows, like, MDF trim is how we finish the interior of a house. And so if you were to put that on the exterior, it
doesn't do too well with water.
No, it's not very good on water. But the cool thing on that is, I think many times people want to do something, or they have the idea of doing something. And one thing you said that I really liked was, you were in it for the skill stacking. Like you were in it for a lot of different things, but I heard initially like, hey, I want to stack this skill. Like it would be great to stack these skills. So you went and did it. And then, I mean, did you know that living in that for 5 years was also going to financially set you up to be able to purchase the house? Was that part of the plan, or was it just?
It wasn't for me. And that's kind of crazy looking back on it, because again, like I think until I had this epiphany that I wanted to do something entrepreneurial with aviation, I didn't have that piece of me where I was like hustling or trying to get ahead or interested in anything like financial independence or some of these ideas that you see people do these type of housing hacks with and stuff like that. For me, it was like, I thought living in a tiny house would be cool. Like I thought chicks would think I was cool if I lived in a tiny house. Like, I don't know what.
And did it work?
Well, I mean, there's a few of them thought it was cool, I guess. I don't know. But,
That's awesome.
but no, I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but like it was purely man, I wonder if I could learn enough skills to build this thing. And then like, I think living in a tiny house would be cool. And in my mind, I was going to live in it until I was 80 years old. Like I built it without a traditional loft where there's a ladder up to the loft where you sleep in it. So the bed is kind of raised four feet above the main living area, but there's like just normal stairs up to it, because I thought I was going to live in it until I was 80. I mean, literally this was through my mind as I'm planning this house out, as like, this is going to be the rest of my life type of thing, which I think is fun to look back on too and say, wow, you don't know where your life's going to go. Cause now it was a really fun run in that tiny house, with the idea of, living in it in perpetuity. Like for me at this point, it's a non-starter, it's not something I'm interested in doing for forever. So, but yeah,
the 30-year-old chicks don't think it's as cool as like the 21.
It's tougher to date. It's tough to date in a tiny house. It's cool when you're like 25 and your competition is living in their van down by the river. But it's
exactly.
tougher.
Yeah, then you got a homemade tiny house.
Yeah,
dude,
then you're cruising.
That's awesome. So I actually love that story. Thanks for sharing that. I've never heard that one. And then you bought your first place. What was that like when you pulled the trigger on buying your first place?
Yeah, so I think that was, at the urging of my dad and a few other people who just said, look, you have this tiny house that you built and that you live in, that you're paying, I was paying someone to rent land to put it on. It was certainly reduced cost of living for myself, but still, I was paying someone else every month. And it was an opportunity to say, hey, if you can get the loan for this house. And right now, I mean, where interest rates are. So for reference, I bought it in early May of 2020. So just after the pandemic had started and rates were super low, and the real pandemic housing boom and bend in terms of housing prices hadn't quite kicked off yet. And so it was a lucky time for sure. And it was just suggested to me, man, if you can get this loan, then you'll be able to find it, to service the loan easily with the rental income, and you'll essentially have zero cost of living. So that next 2 years, I was able to pour everything I had into Direct2 and the business and everything, because of I was essentially living for free.
Yeah.
So it's pretty sweet.
I mean, you say lucky, but May 2020, paint a picture for everybody. Nobody knew what was going to happen at that time. Things were on lockdown. People were pretty scared. Yeah. What made you be comfortable enough to buy a house? Because people were probably telling you, like, I guess sounds like you had some good people in your ear, but most people would be like, oh, don't buy right now. We don't know what's going to happen. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's just, again, maybe it was a time where not having a super deep bench of kind of like business minds and people in my ear, my network was still not super large at that point, where it was just like, my dad and a few other people there wasn't some, big picture knowledge and deeply thought out way about moving chess pieces around. It was just like, hey, this seems to be like the natural next step in your life and your progression. And like we've talked about, I'm predisposed to action. So I heard that and I thought, oh, well, great. Like, I guess if someone will give me a loan to buy a home, like I should go do it. Yeah. And, and started looking around and was looking for a place that could accommodate the tiny house essentially, and so was looking for that lot that had that space to kind of tuck the tiny house in there and not park it in the front yard of the main house and still allow the rental to be a rental kind of. So yeah, I think it was just seeing what's in front of you and just doing it, and sometimes not thinking so big picture that you're kind of paralyzed by maybe this isn't the perfect move at the perfect time, right?
Yeah, I love it. I think that's great advice. And I also think that, the best things happen when everyone's zigging, you should zag, and that usually will work out pretty good. And that's exactly what you did. Yep. So if you don't mind me asking, what'd you buy that house for?
$345,000, and put about $10K into it right away, and just kind of capital improvements. There were 4 legal bedrooms in it when I bought it, and we just did some work to give it egress window to make a 5th legal bedroom, and turned it into an even better rental, really.
Yeah. So it was a 4-bedroom. You had an opportunity to turn it into a 5-bedroom.
Yep.
And then it also had an extra piece of land over here that you were going to park your tiny home on, and that was that.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? The lot was already split. So it's a 10,000, a little over 10,000, I think like 11,000 square foot total lot that had been split by the previous owner, I think sometime in the early 2010s, I'm sure, with the idea that they were going to develop the other side. It was split in such a way that it's just off the corner of the current house. So, it's currently split with that in mind, not to tear the house down and start from scratch, but to allow the one house to still stand and create another buildable lot. And so I realized that kind of in the due diligence to the build. And I did have someone, actually Greg Welch, who said this is a really good idea if you can purchase this because of the way the lot's already split. So that for me was not knowing anything about development or what would happen there, but like I had a hunch that was, it wasn't being marketed that way, right? Yeah. Like in the listing and stuff like that, and on Zillow where I found it, like no one was like, oh, this is a 2-lot house or a 2-lot piece of land. And that seems kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, because there's a lot of value in that, as we know.
Ton of value.
Yeah.
We'll unpack the value as we speak. So the house you bought for $345, and just so everybody knows, Toby's now going to build the triplex on there, right? On that additional piece of land. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful, badass triplex on that piece of land. What did the house get valued for independently?
It got $585.
Yeah, $585 without the lot itself.
Yeah, correct. With the lot totally split.
Yeah. So it's already two legal lots of record. Yeah. The value that nobody else saw, you bought it for $345, which, by the way, most people probably at that time also would have said, oh, you're at the high of the market, don't buy. Yeah. You're overpaying. Yep. Which you're not overpaying, obviously.
Yeah, it turned out,
out just so $585 for the house. And then the land itself, that's what's so cool about real estate is if you do your due diligence and you see what other people can't see yet. Right. That's where all the opportunity lies, right? And so you had that, and now you're going to turn that into a triplex, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And super excited to work with you on that. And that's a new adventure for me too, right? And it's a smart investment, but I still kind of in the same way of like excited to learn that, excited to gain new knowledge and understanding of how that development process works, and like some of the steps we've already been through with initial meetings with the city, obviously pursuing a construction loan, which I've never done. Now pursuing a construction loan as someone that has W-2 income and owns a business, and all those pieces coming together, right? And it's just like, whoa, all this stuff's work. It takes time, right? It never moves as quickly as we'd like, but yeah, it's super exciting. And then just the fact that we can fit 3 doors on that piece of land is pretty cool to me. And yeah, it'll go from having 1 rental to having, I guess 3 rentals, and one will be my primary residence initially. And it's pretty cool.
It's pretty exciting. Let's unpack a little bit, even on the ground up. Like you said, you're excited to stack that skill. You're going from somebody who built a tiny house to now you're going to develop this awesome triplex. What have been some of the biggest hurdles, or let's go a little deeper. It sounds like, talk to us about that process and what's been hard for it and what's been easy,
Well, I think, a huge part is having people who you trust, and can advise you in your corner, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've been lucky kind of over the past number of years through my network in aviation. There's some carryover there with kind of real estate and development. So, that's how I met you, I was just flying on the plane with you, right? And then one day I brought it up to you and you said, hey, we might be interested in helping you develop that or being the builder on that. And I have other people in my life who I've been able to say, hey, give me an honest take on this, or hey, can you give me a referral for who might be a good lender for this project? Because I think think for me, you can just go out there and Google stuff, and you can just kind of send it and get hooked up with random people and call people up and say, hey, I got something to build. But at least for me, it's not nearly as fun that way, right? It's like, it's relationship building and building those long-term type of connections so we can do more business together down the road with people. But then it's just, does it feel personal? Does it feel right? Do you feel like there's rapport and there's good faith actors in your corner, and you're going to shoot people straight and they're going to shoot you straight? So I feel like this was the first time where kind of my network and being in Bend now for 8 years and being part of the business community really came back to kind of help me a little bit on this one. But I think the big thing still is being someone who's young and doesn't have a ton of a net worth built up, is obviously, hey, you got to get capital to make these projects work. So luckily there's equity in the lot, like we've kind of discussed here, being able to split that lot off from the lien I have against the home. But access to capital is huge, as you know.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. It's a major part of it, and it's in the ground up game. What is so good about it is if you have a good deal, the nice thing is you don't have any stress points of it, right? Like, you already own it all.
Yeah.
So, and then if you have a good deal, the best part is you control the deal, and there's always, you could find partners for a deal.
Yep.
You can, there's patience that you can have there, but a good deal, what I love about real estate, we touched on two things. One, it's a relationship game, like you said, right? You're like, I think all of life, but real estate specifically is a relationship game, from the sellers, the people who are going to build, the whole thing works based on the relationships that you're able to build. Like you said, you tapped in your network. But then two, if you have a good deal, the equity, because it does take capital. Yeah. True. But if you have truly a good deal, the money will find it, right? But it just has to be a truly good deal. And you have that. So whether you end up developing that yourself or bring a great a mentor, friend, partner in as well, right? There's so much great optionality. The key is to have the nice piece of real estate.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, you got to get buying this property and having these two lots kind of materialize out of one, so to speak, was maybe that lucky break or whatever. It certainly helps to have a break. And like you said, I think if you can get one going, I can see obviously the pathway to gaining equity in that triplex, and then obviously being able to do more projects like that down the road. So yeah, that's my hope. I think staying patient with it's important. I think, my style is to be pretty impatient, not for any other reason than just predisposed personality to be that way. It's not like I'm trying to grab.
You want to make it happen, baby.
I like action. I like the action. So, and you're that way too. But yeah, I think for me, it feels like the real estate side of things is I've leveraged myself. I've put all my own stuff on the line. I've put myself out there, taken all the risk that I have kind of the appetite for with the business and with Direct 2. So trying to make kind of calculated, smart moves on the real estate side with a longer term vision, with patience, right? I think that's where kind of real estate fits in my own kind of worldview of what I'm up to and what my long-term plan is. And so that's cool to not feel like I have to do anything incredible in that space or take crazy risks. It's not my main business like it is yours, right? I'm not pushing super hard on that front, but it's like, hey, it's maybe make this burn slow and low and smart and have that long-term vision and don't play yourself out of a good deal almost.
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. And it's a get rich slow game, right? For sure in the real estate. What's next for Toby Woods?
Yeah, man. I mean, I got some really cool, exciting stuff on the Direct 2 front with what we're doing with unmanned aviation. So
what's
drone delivery. Okay, so we're involved in some projects really kind of on the bleeding edge with the Federal Aviation Administration, getting authority to deliver food and consumer packaged goods.
Meaning like rather than DoorDash, somebody drives it over. You're gonna pick up my Chick-fil-A and
100%. Yeah. So it might
with
be,
drones.
Yeah. It might be for a DoorDash, for a Grubhub, for an Uber, for some of these delivery delivery apps replacing vehicle-based delivery. The cost of those deliveries for those companies right now is about $8 to $9 per delivery in the car. We think we can get those economics long-term down to about $2 a delivery. So vastly improve the economics, make it profitable for all. In the short term, our goal is to get it down to about $6 delivery. We think there's a pathway to get there with some continuing regulatory approval and evolution on the FAA's front, and authority for what we can do as an air carrier. But I think that's what really turns me on and excites me about what we have going on the business side is some of that work. I really think there's a paradigm shift in the way that things are going to get delivered to people, at least in suburban and urban areas, where the population density provides a good enough business case for it. And to be part of that, to be part of doing something with the business that's, kind of pushing the envelope of what's possible, what's been done before, and working on the regulatory front, working on the business case front. It's deep in with partnerships, with working with food delivery companies, with working with these aircraft drone manufacturers, right? It's super exciting. So that stuff has really got me reinvigorated with my business. And then, yeah, man, just trying to enjoy myself too as we go, man. Not get too caught up in it all and hang out and see where it goes.
Is that hard for you to do sometimes? I
think it has been. It has been. Yeah. My identity was super, super caught up in my business, in my entrepreneurial pursuits for the first few years of the business. I really saw, I thought everyone in my life was going to judge me based on the failure or success of the business, and never having been through the highs and lows. I mean, you don't know whether you're on the right path, you're going to go out of business in a week, or you're crazy, or you're smart, or whatever. Right. And I think I still don't know all those things, but I'm not so caught up in my own self-worth, my self-identity, and convinced that the people in my life and the people around me are, see me as just an extension of that business. And so that's gotten a lot better for me and allowed me to have more fun and just say, man, we're out here trying, we're busting our ass, right? Man, we're still gonna go for a run, grab a beer, hang out, whatever. It doesn't matter what happens. We're gonna do our best and then let it be, and let it be at peace with it.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. For somebody who's listening, and maybe it's not in aviation, but they have an entrepreneurial spirit, they have an entrepreneurial idea, and they're just at this teeter-totter if they're gonna make it happen or not. What advice do you have for them?
Well, I think going back to some of the stuff I referred to earlier, I think any way to kind of test your business case without taking the big leap initially, right? So if it's working for another company that kind of closely aligned to what you want to do, and again, learning not making the same, so you can not make the same mistake once, right? Learning through other people's successes and failures, or whether it's just starting something on the side, that can see if your idea has any traction or whatever. I think any way that you can gain a ton of information without a ton of investment, and then speed up that iterative process, right? Because you're probably not going to be right on point with that $1 million idea that first time, right? So if you can gain some more knowledge, the only way you can gain knowledge is by getting out there and doing it. But if you can do it with limited investment, at least of your own money, right, then you can get closer to that product market fit, to that whatever that is. And I think that's probably the biggest thing for me is how can you learn and how can you speed up, your iterative process. And if you can do those things and fail quick, Elon likes to say fail quick, right? I like that one too, because it's that same idea of figure out what doesn't work. There's a lot of things that don't work to figure out what does. I know we've all had that experience, but so it's really knowledge acquisition with limited investment, and then once you'll know when things start to go right, you can feel it, right? If you're I don't know if this is it, probably isn't it, right? So yeah.
I love it. I hope you guys are listening, because Toby is dropping bombs for us there. I couldn't agree more. Always, it's I think there's a great ideation, right? When you're getting started, you have to look at what you have, and from a resource side, originally, what you really have is a lot of time, especially if you're still a young entrepreneur who doesn't have a family yet. So exactly what you're saying, trade all that time, that hard work for that knowledge, right?
Yep.
Because no matter what, you have to go through it.
Sure.
Right. And so use the time that you have right now more of to gain all the knowledge you need. And then, like you said, the first couple ideas are usually not the $1 million ones, but they give you all the experience and knowledge you needed to then go and kick off. So
you're just, I mean, man, every day you're getting out there, you're learning what you're good at, you're learning what you're not good at, you're meeting people, you're learning more business skills, especially if you didn't go to business school. But even if you did, I think you don't come from a lot of that real world experience. And then some of us come from more real world experience, or some of us don't come from either of those, right? So it's like, but you got to be out there. You got to put your feet on the field and play. So if you can put your feet on the field and play without throwing everything in one bucket off the start, then you give yourself that light on the feet, but you're still learning and growing. I mean, I think recently someone told me like, hey, maybe even now, even where you are with Direct 2, and we've been at it for a while and we've grown and, we have a consistent business, but maybe even this isn't it, right? Like you're 30 and like, you're still growing, you're learning, your network's improving, and your understanding of what you're good at and what you're not is improving, and your understanding of the market's improving. And like, that was freeing to me, that comment of like, oh yeah, like, wow, that's okay. Right. Again, it's just that thing of realizing that this doesn't have to be perfect today. And this doesn't have to be the beginning and the end and everything all at once. It's just, you're where you are in the river. I'm a river guy. I used to be a river guide, and sometimes you just got to let it flow and realize that what will be, man. It's a beautiful ride.
It's a beautiful ride. This will be a really, really fun time capsule to look back on. Toby, for anybody that wants to get connected with you, how do they get connected with you?
Yeah, I mean, if you need air charter flights, if you're looking for aircraft management, if you're looking to invest in the unmanned aviation space, you can find contact info for the company Direct 2. That's Direct and the number 2. The website is direct2.aero. So the domain name is .aero. And yeah, you give us a shout on there, some contact forms, whether you're looking to book a flight or just want to learn more about what we do. And feel free to give us a shout, and love to work with you on all things aviation operations.
Boom, baby. Like we said, Toby, you will not be let down. We're a customer of Toby's, and we love it. We love it. I cannot wait to see where things go. Thanks for coming on the podcast, dropping knowledge, experience, and just being with us. I learned a lot here, so I really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Dirk. Really appreciate it. It's been super fun.
Awesome, man. And with that, we will see you on the next one, baby.